Hello everyone, welcome to Tutorials by Decade. My name is Decade, and before we get into this video, first I would like to apologize for not releasing a video last week. There's just been a lot going on in my life, so I've been kind of busy. I'm going to try to get a video out for this week, which is obviously this video, but I'm also going to try to get ahead of the game and possibly record a few other videos for this week for the next coming weeks. So if you do message me or anything like that, and it just seems I'm really delayed getting back to you, or if like you want a request a video and it just takes a while for me to get to it, I do apologize. Again, there's just busy time going on right now in my life with my kids and everything else, so I'm doing what I can. So with that out of the way, if you've liked any of my other videos, please give me a big old thumbs up. I do appreciate it. It helps me out. Also, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe, as I have videos like this coming out all the time. Just not as often, unfortunately. But nonetheless, I do have videos like this coming out all the time, and I do not want you to miss anything. So with that all out of the way, let's get into it. So what we're going to do with this video is we're going to continue working on our dungeons. So let me get over to our dungeon scene. There we go. So here's our dungeon scene. Nothing too crazy, nothing too spectacular with it. You're able to essentially take out these two enemies, and this door opens. So let's quickly build the next room. Where is my palette? I'm already on the palette. Oh my god. Anyway, let's quickly build the next room real fast, just so that way we can work on what we want to do. And what we want to do for this video is we are going to have our player step on a button, essentially, and open up the door. So normally I would speed through this, but I want to show you guys how I do this real quick. So first we're going to create empty, and we're going to do room 01. What we're going to do is we're going to take this camera, we're just going to duplicate it, we're going to drop it into there, we're just going to rename it room camera 01 camera. There we go. Now this room needs a polygon collider, and points, we're going to do 4 of them. Our first point should be 11. I want to say, yeah, 18. And negative 11, 18. Negative 11, 6. And negative 11. That should put us right up against that room, which it does. So we're good there. All right, now we can continue building our room. So we're essentially just gonna do, wait, that's weird, but it's right, whatever. Anyway, we're gonna continue doing that. We build our room. We want to make sure we're on dungeon walls, so these are solid. The player can't just walk right through them. Oops. We want that to be that. There we go. Now we'll switch to our dungeon ground. We'll pull this guy out here and box mode. And there we go. So there's our room for the next one. Let's add a door. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go to our door here. Where did I put the door? Dungeon door. duplicate this guy, move it to this room, rid of the name of it, keep it dungeon door, and then we will move it. I do believe it's 17.5. Yeah. So we will move it right to there. Oh, we need to do some things with our camera first. We need to change the bounding shape to this room. Since this is not the main camera, we're going to change our priority to 0. And what we're going to do now is we're going to actually add a button for the player to step on in order to open this door. So what we're going to do is go to our sprites, go to our world, go to our interior, click on, let's go to console to get rid of that stuff there so we don't accidentally draw. We're going to click on interior 15 and we're going to just drag and drop it somewhere. We'll change the location of it to 0.5 and then 11.5. We will change the sorting layer to ground. What we're going to do now is add an animator to it. We're also going to add a box collider 2D to it. We're going to keep the box collider the same size. We're just going to make it a trigger. And the animator, what we're going to do, first let's rename this. We'll just rename it for button. And we will put it in the room 01. And now that we have that selected, we're going to go to our animation. We're going to create an animation. We are going to drop the animations into animation, items. Do we want items? No, we're just going to make a new folder. We'll just dungeons. And then floor button. Actually, this is the animation, so we're going to do button underscore 1 underscore not underscore pressed. And all we're going to do for that animation is just take the same sprite, so interior 15, and just drop it in there. All we're going to do. Then we're going to create a new clip, and we're going to name it button underscore 1 underscore pressed. And we're going to drop in, I kind of like this one, interior 13. You can drop in 14 if you want, but we're going to drop 13 in there. And that's it for that. So now what we got to do is go up to our animator. We are going to put that there. And we're going to put this underneath it. And we're going to be doing 2 different things with our buttons. In this video, we're just going to have it permanently pressed. So when the player steps on it, it's pressed and done and over with. But later, we're going to do buttons where you have to either stand on it or you're going to have to move something on it in order for it to stay pressed. So with that being said, we're going to need a trigger. And we're just going to name this one pressed. We're also going to need a bowl, and we're going to name this one is pressed. We're going to make a transition from pressed to not pressed, and a transition back. So the transition to pressed, we are going to get rid of exit time, get rid of fixed duration. We're going to add pressed. We're also going to add is pressed true. And then to go back, all we're going to do first get rid of exit time and fixed duration. And to go back, what we're going to do is just is pressed false. And that is all that we're going to do for now in Unity. So what we're going to do is we're just going to save our scene. Again, Control S or Command S to do that. And we are going to work on some scripts. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our, did I make a dungeon? Yes, I did. We'll go to our dungeon. And hold on, let me pull up my notes on the other side. Boom, boom. And we're going to make a auto behavior script, and we're going to call it dungeon locked door. That freaked out there for a second for whatever reason, but whenever it's ready to open up, we'll open it up. That's not the dungeon lock door. Wait a minute. I didn't change anything, Unity. What are you doing? That's the dungeon lock door. Get rid of everything in there. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a header in here. We're going to call it door settings. We're going to do a tooltip. And this is optional. Optional animator if you want open, close animations. So I don't have any open close animations, and if I do have them, I'm not using them right now. But if you do, or if you want to create your own, you're going to need an animator, obviously, here for this. Name it animator because that's what popped up. We'll need another tooltip here, and then this is going to be disable the door game object when opened, then serialize the field, then private, full disable on open, and we're going to default that to true. And then tooltip, if true, the door can be closed again later. We're not going to be doing that in this video, but we're just setting it up for that. So private bool can close again equals false. Then we just need a private bool is open and default that to false. And then a public bool is open. And now we need a function to open the door. So a public void open door. We're going to do if is open. We're just going to simply return because the door is already open. If it's not already open, then we're going to run all this stuff. We're going to change is open to true. Then if we have animators, or animator, or I should say, so if animator is not null, then animator dot set bool is open, or whatever it is that you name it in your animator, true. Then if disable on open is true, then we're going to do game object dot set active false. So realistically speaking, for the sake of this video, this is all that we need. But we are going to get at least the skeleton work done for being able to close the doors later. So we're going to do public void close door. And then if not can close again, then we just return. And if not is opened, then we also just return. So in other words, if we have it set so that way it can close again, and if the door is open, then we'll run through everything. But if either one of these is false, we'll just return. Then we're going to change is open to false if animator not equals null, meaning we have an animator. And in this case, I do not. But in case you do, we're going to do animator dot set bool is open, or again, whatever you named it in your animator, false. Then we're going to do if disable, oh, not that. If disable on open, then not animator, game object dot set active true. And then you can save this script because we are done with it, and that is all we need to do here. So let's go back into Unity real fast. Maybe. There we go. And then let's go to this dungeon door because we only need it for this dungeon door. We'll add the script and we'll do dungeon locked door. Now we want it to, for the sake of this video, we want to disable it on open and we do not want to close it again. And there is no animator on this door because I did not animate it. That is all we need to do here. Now we need to trigger that door. And in order to do that, we need something to trigger it. In this case, it'll be this button. But that button needs a little bit of code in order to work. So we're going to create a mono behavior script, and we're going to name that floor button. I'm putting it in dungeon right now, but whatever makes more sense for you is where I would put this script. Once Unity does its thing, we are going to open that up. You're going to get rid of everything in here. Maybe if my mouse would cooperate. For the using, we're going to do using system.collections.generic. And in here, we're going to do a header and linked objects because you might have more than one door. So tooltip, the doors, this button controls. And again, for the sake of this video, we're just going to do one door. But with this code, you'll be able to do multiple doors. So list, then in here, we're going to put dungeon locked door. And we're going to name this linked doors. And it's going to be a new list of dungeon locked doors. We're going to do another header. We're going to call this one button behavior. Then tooltip. If true, the button stays pressed forever once activated. Then we're going to serialize the field and then a private bool stays pressed, and then we're going to default that to true. Now this next one we're not going to need for the sake of this video, but again we are setting it up for future videos. So if false, the button only stays pressed while, I'm sorry, not if false, if true. Button only stays pressed while something is standing on it. And then serialized field, and then private bool allow temporary mode, and then false. All right, then we need the animator. So header animation, and in here tooltip animator for the floor button. We're going to serialize that field, and now we're going to do a private animator. And we're just going to name it animator. Another tooltip. Animator trigger for pressing the button. So we're going to do something a little bit different than what we did before, because if you remember before with certain things, what we had to do was we had to physically type in the name in the script of like the bool or whatever. We could do that here, but to make life a little simpler in case we misspell something, we're going to do it like this. So we're going to do a private string press trigger name, and we're going to default that to pressed because that's what I named it, but we can always change that later. We're going to do the same thing for the animator, the bull, animator bull for held down state. Serialize that field, and we're going to do private held bull name equals is pressed because again that's what I named it, but we can change that. Oh, private string. There we go. All right, now another header. This is going to be the allowed activators. Again, for the sake of this video, we're not going to need this, but this is going to be something we're going to need later, so why not add it instead of having to come back and mess with everything again. So we're going to set it up where objects have to have a certain tag in order to activate the button. So in order to do that, we need a private list strings, and we're going to name this valid tags, and it's going to be a new list of strings. And we're going to do something I don't think we've done before, but we're going to auto-populate something in there. That is going to be these curly brackets, and then in parentheses, player. So that way the player should automatically be added into that list. The last thing we need to do for our variable, oh no, we got two more variables actually we need to do. We need to do a private bool is pressed was false, and unless you want to debug it, it does not need to be serialized. And then this is going to be used for temporary buttons so they know if something is still standing on them. Just in case we accidentally get like multiple things on one button, we're going to do things in such a way where we'll have to make sure that there is absolutely nothing on those buttons in order for the door to, or the button to be lifted again. Again, not going to be necessarily doing that in this video, but just getting it all set up. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do a private void reset. And we need a variable that is a collider, and we're going to get component collider 2D. And then we're going to make sure that collider is set to trigger. This should already be set to a trigger. We've already done that when I put it on the button, but this just makes sure it's always set that. Now we need to do a private void on trigger enter 2D. And as always, I like to change collision to other. And in here, we're going to do if not as valid tag other return. That's going to give us an error because we have not created has valid tag yet. We will here in just a few minutes. So, but what we're going to do is after we pass that check, we'll do activator count. Why is my activator count not popping up? Ah, that's because I don't know how to spell apparently. There we go. We're going to do activator count plus plus. Then we're going to do some checks. So if stays pressed, then we're going to check to see if is pressed already. If it is pressed already, we're just going to return. Otherwise, we're going to press permanently. Now, again, this is going to give us an error because we haven't created press permanently yet, but we will. We're going to do an else press temporarily. Again, going to give us an error because we haven't created that yet. We also need to do an exit. So private void on trigger exit 2D. And again, change this to other. Then if not as valid tag other. Again, we're going to return. And again, we're going to get an error because we haven't done this yet. And if stays pressed, turn, because if it stays pressed, we don't care if something exited or not. However, if we make it past those two checks, then we need to do activator count equals mathf dot max 0 or activator count -1. If the activator count is at 0, then we release temporary. Again, going to give us an error because we haven't created that yet. Real fast, before we get into creating some of these, like the has valid tag and all that stuff, what's going to happen is if something enters the trigger area, and if it has a valid tag, it's going to act as an activator. So our activator count's going to go up by 1. Then we're going to check to see if we have it set to stays pressed or not. If it stays pressed, then our show the mouse sometimes, but if stays pressed, then we're going to check to see if it's already pressed. And then we're going to press it permanently, which will be creating that little block here in a minute. And if it's not stays pressed, then we're just going to temporarily press it. And what our trigger exit does is if something exits, it's going to run a check to see if whatever exited that trigger has a valid tag. Then it's also going to check to see if this button is supposed to stay pressed. If the button is supposed to stay pressed, then none of this is going to matter anyway. But if it is just a temporary press on the button, then it's going to check the activator count, or subtract 1 from the activator count, I should say. If the activator count is at 0, then it's going to release our press of the button. But if our activator count is still over 0, then it's going to stay pressed down, meaning that there's maybe a box and the player standing on it or something like that. But let's get rid of some of these errors here and do a private bool as valid tag. And we're looking for a collider 2D, and we'll name that other. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through our entire list of valid tags, which again, right now there's just one thing in there, but later down the road there might be multiple things in there. So to do this, we're going to use a for loop. So for int I equals 0, I is less than valid tags dot count I plus plus. So we've already kind of went over a for loop in the last video, and maybe even some other videos. Just bear in mind that for loops are going to be used a lot in your future if you plan on doing games or any type of programming for that matter. So get used to for loops. But if or for each of that, we're going to check if other dot compare tag is valid tags. So we're going to check to see if it's invalid tags. If it is, we're just going to simply return true. Now, we've already been over this before of why I didn't put this in brackets. We could if we wanted to, but since we're only doing one thing, no point in wasting the time or the space by putting brackets. Now, if we were checking some other things in here or doing multiple things in this if statement, then we would have to use brackets because the if statement without brackets is only going to run the first line after the if statement. So after it goes through all of that, if it didn't find anything, oops, get rid of that bracket. If it didn't find anything, then we're just going to simply return false. And now I've made it max. I've accidentally deleted a bracket. There we go. All right. So that gets rid of the has valid tag bool error that we were getting up here. Now let's get rid of some of those other errors. So we're going to do a private void press permanently. So just by doing this, we should have gotten rid of this error right there. Yep. That error is now gone. So let's do something. So, first we're going to do if pressed equals true right off the bat. So that way, why is this giving me? Oh, is pressed, not if pressed. My God. So is pressed true right off the bat. That way we make sure our button is pressed and everything works. We're going to check to see if there's an animator. So if animator not equals null, then what we're going to do is animator dot set trigger fresh trigger name. And then if we are using a bool to, if this is a temporary button press, then we'll also need to set our bool. So if string dot is null or empty for, or not is null or empty for called bool name. What's going on here? There we go. Then we need to set the animator dot set bool held bool name to true. So we're kind of doing two things to set that animation off on the button, but a trigger just fires once and is done, whereas a bool will hold it there until it changes. Because we're pressing the button permanently, we want to set this to true, but we'll never change it back to false. However, in the future, if you want that to be temporary, then held bool, the is pressed bool in the animator needs to be set back to false whenever we want to reset the button. And I'll show you what I mean here because I probably explained it very poorly, but whatever the case may be, we need to move on and actually open the doors now. So if linked doors not equals null, in the dungeon room clear, we used a for loop here. What we could have done, and probably what we should have done, is used a for each loop. So a for loop is if you want to go through a list and only find certain things, but when we know all the doors are going to need to be opened, then a for each loop is probably the best bet. So for each var for variable and then door in linked doors. Keep doing that. It's driving me crazy. So for each of those doors, we're going to check to see if door is not null, meaning there is one there. And then we're just going to do door dot open door. Don't forget, our linked doors is linked to the dungeon lock doors. And because our open door here is public, we're able to call it in here. And that's all we need to do for press permanently. Now here's the fun part. For private void press temp, did I do this temporarily or did I do? Oh, we'll see. Get rid of the errors, then we know. Yeah, okay, I did press temporarily. Anyway, for press temporarily, we are essentially doing the exact same thing, but just some minor differences. right? So first, we're gonna check to see if we are not allowing temporary mode. If we are not allowing temporary mode, then we're just simply returning because we're not temporary, so it doesn't matter. Then we're going to check if not is pressed. Then we're essentially going to change is pressed to true. Then if animator not equals null. And at this point, we're doing everything we've already done. Animator dot set trigger, press trigger name. If not string dot is null or empty, held bool name. Then animator dot set bool. No, not set bool. Held bool name and true. And then we need to also if link doors not equals null. Actually, this needs to be in here. If doors not equals null, then the for each again. Var door and linked doors. If door not equals null, then door dot. That's all we need to do here. All right. So the difference between press temporarily and press permanently is first we're checking to see if we're allowed temporary mode. And if we are, then we move on. If not, then we simply return. But we're also checking to see if it's not already pressed. Because again, don't forget, up here on the on trigger, anytime something enters the trigger, on trigger is going to run. So press temporarily is going to check to see if it's already pressed. If it's not already pressed, then we run everything. If it is already pressed, then there's no need to run everything. Okay. Last thing we need to do is release the temporary. So private void release temporary. That should get rid of our error up there, which it did. And essentially all we're going to do is everything in reverse. We're going to check to see if not allowed temporary mode. And if we're not allowing temporary mode, then we just straight up cancel. Let me mute my phone. I'm sorry. My wife's at work and she is very bored and she is sending me like 1,000 TikToks. Anyway. So if not allowed temporary mode, then we're just going to return because none of this matters anyway. But we're going to check to see if pressed is false. Or we're going to change is pressed to false after we get past that check. Then we're going to do if animator not equals null and not string dot is null or empty, then held bool name. And this is where we're going to change our bool back to false. So our door closes again. At least for the animation. But now we actually have to close the doors. So we're going to do another for each. Var, door, and link doors. And we're going to check if door not equals null. And then we're just simply going to do door dot close door. Then we're going to save that because that should be everything. So let's go back into Unity and let Unity do its thing. We're going to click on our floor button. We are going to add our floor button script. Whatever doors you want to have open, we need to drag into this list. So this dungeon door, drop it there, and there we go. For the sake of this video, we want it to stay pressed. All right. Don't want to do a temporary one. We want it to stay pressed. But we are set up to do temporary. All you would have to do is uncheck that and check that. But we want it to stay pressed. The animator, I did not set it up so it automatically pulls the animator, so we just have to drag the floor button and drop that there. So press trigger name needs to match the trigger here, so it's pressed, and then here it is pressed. And then the held bool name has to match in here, so for me it is pressed, and that's what matches here. And later down the road, when we have like movable objects like boxes or statues or whatever, we need to add the tags to those things here. But as you can see, it automatically added the player tag. Again, if you already have movable objects, just make sure you give them a tag like box or statue or whatever, and then add that tag there. Once all of that is done, we can save this scene by Control S or Command S. Because our starting scene is the test scene, we need to go here. And then something that was driving me crazy with my test of all of this on a separate project. I don't know if I ever did this with you guys or not, but if you go to each of these rooms and go to the cameras, you want to make sure the priority is set to 0. I accidentally had one of them set to 20, and every time I started my game, it would shoot to another room and then shoot back to where the player was. So if you're experiencing that issue, check all your cameras. Make sure that the only one that has a priority of 20 is your starting room camera. But anyway, we're going to hit play. And because I have the camera selected, there we go. That's why all that stuff was like that light blue color and all weird like. But anyway, we're going to go into our dungeon. Boom. Let's take out these two guys here. I got a coin off him. Will you give me a coin? No. So this door opens. Boom. Oh. What did I mess up? I think I know what I messed up. So let's go to our dungeon scene. Go to our room. 1, that is a trigger, but room 2 is not a trigger. While we're here, there is something else I want to address. Every time you create a scene, you have to go to your main camera, go to the Sin Machine Brain, and then change the transition to that 0.5 that we did originally in the overall scene. Because if you don't do that, it's going to be a slow transition. All right, let's go back to our test scene now that I've fixed my mistake. Let's run this again. All right, let's take care of our little dudes here. There we go. Now we should be able to go to the next room, but it didn't transition. So we're able to go there, but for whatever reason, it is not transitioning. Did I forget to do something else? Probably. I forgot the room script. So room script, and then drag the camera. Don't need to worry about any of that other stuff. Let's save this again. Let's try this one more time, hopefully. You know, all the stuff that we did today, we can't test if I keep messing other things up. So let's go back to here. Let's hit play, and let's try this, hopefully, one last time. And we go through there. Take care of our little guys again. That guy keeps giving me a coin. Will you give me a coin? Yay! All right, now we go into our next room. There we go. So let's bypass the button first, and let's just go here. And I don't know why that freaked out there. But anyway, as you can see, we cannot go through the door. Let's go step on our button. Now see how the door opened and our animation changed. Now we can walk through. I just don't have another room there yet, obviously. But there we go. So that is how we get our button set up. And we're already set up to temporarily have this button go, as well as already set up to have these buttons accept something to be pushed onto them, as opposed to just standing on them. So if you guys want to, you can go ahead and figure out how to do that, and I will cover it in the next video. Again, it is pretty simple. Most of the stuff is already set up for you. As a matter of fact, if you just want this button to be temporary, all you have to do is change those two bulls that I showed you. But yeah, this is where I'm going to end this video. If you enjoyed it, if you learned something from it, make sure you give it the big old thumbs up. I do appreciate it, and it does help me out. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, as I have videos like this coming out all the time, and I do not want you to miss anything. And with all of that out of the way, as always, thank you. Have a good one. And I'll see you in the next video.